Well, good afternoon, everybody. Just 10 minutes to go now to the start of the flying display, and that is going to be a pretty dramatic start as well. The dynamism that Richard Goodwin brings to air shows is quite phenomenal, and this little machine that will start this afternoon show, the second day of this fabulous English Riviera Airshow, is second to none. It's highly modified. It comes with additional oomph of power, absolutely amazing amount. And you will be wowed by the flying antics of this particular individual. So get yourselves set and wrapped up and ready to go, because we've got a great roller coaster of a multitude of different activities and different aircraft, and we will be hopefully putting on a full show for you. All the aircraft have checked in, pilots checked in, they're all ready to go, and be flying right through until around 4:30 this afternoon. And what better weather could we possibly pray for on a day like this? Absolutely terrific. Yes, it is indeed the day we've been waiting for. A fantastic Mr. Blue Sky day ahead of us. If you have just joined us, a huge welcome to you, and thank you for turning out today. We've just had the most phenomenal day yesterday, and we look forward to doing exactly the same this afternoon as well. Make sure you pick up a program if you've just arrived, just £10, lots of super information, maps, and also great details on all the aircraft and the pilots as well. Some fabulous photographs there for the kids to enjoy as well. Pick up a wristband for them. You can do that from the information stand. It's where the Lost Children's stand is also located at the centre of the paint and greens area, just as you come in on the footpath from the road there. And also make sure you keep hold of, therefore, of all your belongings, and your children especially. Make sure they've got lots of head cover, sunscreen, and of course lots of water during the course of the day. Even you grown-ups out there, it still feels fairly fresh coming in off the water there, but the sun very strong this time of year, so please ensure that you take appropriate cover and precautions for that. Thanks very much. If you see anything you're not too sure about, then just speak to any of the friendly volunteers and staff around the showground as well. Well, we're set with a terrific cross-section of aircraft. We will be giving you a break at about 2:30, so you can top up on the all-important teas and coffees from all the vendors around the site here. But we just hope that you enjoy being with us today. It doesn't come easy, of course. A phenomenal amount of work has gone into putting this show on. And we'd like to say a huge thank you, and for me, on behalf of Torbay Council, to extend a grateful thanks to all the airshow partners and sponsors for their generous support and contributions to providing this show here today. The partners for the show are the English Riviera Bid Company, the guardian of the English Riviera brand, and with a focus on attracting new year-round visitors to the Bay. Big Wave Media, a full-service marketing agency working closely with Southwest-based organisations to provide employment and workplace opportunities. Our headline sponsor for the airshow this year being the Mercure and Ibis Styles Hotels in Paynton. A superb new addition to the environment here. Both hotels offer guests a unique and special leisure and dining experience. But a whole list of additional sponsors. Top of the list there, the gold sponsors, Persimmon Homes, of course providing high standard housing accommodation. Great Western Railway, the travel partner for the airshow, offering travel options in and out of the bay. Kent's Cavern, showcasing the amazing geological heritage of Torbay. You can see them. They've got a stand here as well. Torbay Pharmaceuticals, operating in Torbay for over 50 years and actively supporting the economy and local economy. Barnes Aerospace, providing precision aircraft and engine components. The silver sponsors being Landscove Holidays, also delivering holiday park accommodation in the southwest. Havana Homes, building additional good homes for us all. And in the bronze category, well, Wensley Offshore. They provide services dedicated to the scattering of ashes at sea from ex-RNLI lifeboats. And you can see out there, once the ferry passes by, that we've also got an accumulation of boats out there. And that is because not only do we have to protect the airspace, but we have to protect the sea underneath as well from a flight safety perspective, which means that whilst you're free to swim at the moment, in the next few minutes, I would like you to make your way back towards the beach. The paddling is absolutely fine and close to the beach, but please don't go out any further during the course of the airshow. I see a couple of paddlers out there. If those paddlers just start making their way back towards the shoreline, that's fine. And then, of course, that MEZ, it deserves another thank you to the volunteers who are also monitoring the activities and keeping that exclusion area clear so that we can continue with the flying displays safely. Finally, if you're in need of a tipple later on, and I suspect I'll certainly be one of those, then Torbay Gin are here, and thank you to them for producing a limited edition gin, especially for the airshow, and to Sabotage, an internationally renowned street artist, for the limited edition label on the bottle, I should say. It's not on the bottle, it's on the front of the bottle. They're all in the Artisan Marquee, and go and have a look around there. Some fantastic articles, gifts, all sorts of things available. Those just one-off items you perhaps wouldn't normally shop for. Definitely worth going to take a look at that as well. Well, we've just got literally just a couple of minutes to go now, and as I say, get settled down, ready for the start in just a couple of minutes with Preswood Goodwin, his pit special. Okay, boys and girls, mums and dads, I need you to help me out now. I'm looking out for an aircraft, probably up on the right-hand side. Give us a point or a wave if you can picking them out. This is the first aircraft coming in to entertain us now. And it's a tiny little thing, but it packs an awful lot of power. So get yourselves ready to enjoy what is coming up next. It's a really powerful, punchy start to the air show. And this in a pit special. You'll see the smoke coming on in a moment. He'll dive down towards the pier and then come in his trademark position, which is no normal way to fly an aircraft. Believe me. Here he comes in now. Dipping in, going sideways, smoke is on. It is Richard Goodwin with a pit special. And what is that extraordinary noise that you're hearing? Well, it hasn't just got one normal engine on the front. It's a very big piston engine, but actually up the front end of the fuselage, he's got two little jet engines as well. And that's what you heard suddenly kick in. And that enables the aircraft to go virtually keep going up, 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 and then stopping in a hover. It's quite exceptional. And this man being right at the sharp end of really outstanding, unlimited professional aerobatic activity, rarely flies in a straight line, always throwing in turns. Here he is spinning down towards the sea, all perfectly under control. And actually the head is going whizzing around. Imagine putting yourself in a spin dryer and just selecting fast spin for the next 10 minutes. You can imagine how you might feel, but in the hands of this guy, absolutely consummate and very, very dedicated, committed pilot and flying. This aircraft built from scratch over a period of 4 years. It's based on a Pitts S2S fuselage and incorporated with a whole set of tested modifications that he worked up on his red and white aircraft you may remember seeing here in past years. That was called G-Whiz. One of the biggest difference here is with the wing design. He's working with a guy called Eddie Sorinam from Aeroworks, and he's really made a difference to this aircraft. Big ailerons onto this with a bigger wing area as well. Gives it, as you can see, a phenomenal roll rate. And hear those jet engines kicking in there. It's just absolutely phenomenal machine. If I take you back around about 80 years or so ago, there was a fellow called Curtis Pitts out in the States who was the man that came up with this particular design. Now, not this one, this is a heavily modified, but in the mid-40s, he was looking to perfect the art, and they all had a little skunk on the painted on the side, and the person that really made that famous towards the end of the 40s, early 50s, was actually a lady called Betty Skelton, and she nicknamed her aircraft the Little Stinker. And if you're ever across in Washington, D.C. at the Dallas airfield, then there's an extension of the Smithsonian exhibition in there. And before you go to the space shuttle, look up above you and you'll find Betty Skelton's original pit special hanging upside down from the roof of that particular museum. Looking back at Richard, though, and his extraordinary machine, he spent thousands of hours in modifying this and bringing up to spec, years and years of his time, building the wooden wings himself, and just making all the parts a little bit bigger. Well, the routine, as I mentioned, is just between sort of 9 and 10 minutes, and majority of the up and down, left and right, what we call the A-axis, just 150 meters from you. It's been modified to fly with additional thrust from those two Lynx jet engines, and they have two completely different operating systems, two completely different fuel flow systems as well, giving the total available thrust of this aircraft up to over 1,600 pounds, which is exceptional for an aircraft of this size and class. The main engine, a Lycoming 540, gives you a good £1,000 worth anyway, but I mean, it's just absolutely extraordinary. That uses avgas, of course, but there's also 300 pounds either side with the two Lynx jet turbine engines using jet fuel A1. Going on the display, all three engines will function much of the time. He's able to fly it, of course, with variable thrust, with all of them forward, with some of them not, and he's able to recover the aircraft with just one source of power as well, whether it be prop or turbine. And here is a classic example with him holding the aircraft literally just hovering in the sky, a little bit of forward flight, and he needs that just to make the ailerons remain effective as well. Otherwise it may be tricky controlling the aircraft, and you'll see what happens when he does literally just hold it, because here he is now developing it, now coming to a more stationary position, and that is literally the Pitts Harrier right in front of your eyes. It's an extraordinary development. He's had DNA in his blood for eons. His father was the Hunter display pilot for the Royal Air Force many years ago, and Richard himself trained and was on operations on the Tornado GR4 for many years before deciding to go commercial. He flew many years on the 787, and here now this is his passion, this is what he works for all the time. He's very popular around the air display event sites, and I think you can see why. Now that little bit of gyroscopic activity there, all connected to the counter rotation from the propeller, but actually proving at the same time that he's still totally in control despite there being virtually no airflow over the wings. Each maneuver throws in a lot of rolls, some of them snap rolls and tumbles, dives. At the top will demonstrate a few hammerheads as well. And as I say, rarely flying in a straight line for much longer. Here, converting all that height plus the power of the engine into total energy, which gives him all the requirements to now comfortably go through a series of maneuvers on an upward way. So they're not quite what we call a l'entrevent, because he's actually still going forward, but actually using the maneuvers fairly similar to that, putting in the rolls as he's on the upwards trajectory. Looking as if he's going into a loop, but he won't. He'll pull it out at the top. A phenomenal rate of roll with the size of the advanced wing, the huge wing area, and the additional ailerons he's put on there as well, all helping to give him a lot of options. Once again, going up into the hover, kicking in the jet engines, now up to full power. And look how he can just hold that. A little bit of gyroscopic effect coming into play now as he holds it comfortably in rotation, but must feel very strange sitting in an aircraft that is meant to fly forward, letting it tumble now over end, and safely recovering. Of course, this doesn't come easy. Literally years and years of practice and training has gone into this, and it's not something you can do lightly. He needs to get up and do this a couple of times a week just to keep the G-flex and routines and currency in his own body. It goes from literally extremes as he literally throws the stick around the cockpit. Max rate turns here using all that rear propellers. He spirals upwards, carving the fantastic shapes. Great day for using smoke here. It was all a bit hazy yesterday, even with the red arrows. It was tricky, strange weather, but today just perfect. Now he's just here giving the engine a bit of a cooling down, just repositioning himself for the next series of maneuvers. He'll be looking out for you, picking up his appropriate position for this. Going inverted now, all the blood is rushing to his head. Converting that now into an outside turn, literally increasing the amount of negative G, around about -3. A very uncomfortable position before converting that into more positive, much more comfortable flying. It's a tiny little thing. It looks quite large out there, being the only aircraft in the sky, but when you get up against it, it really is the aircraft very much part of the whole machine and back into his knife edge configuration. He has done this chasing cars down runways, cutting ribbons between balloons in the sky, and there are not many things he hasn't tried. Once again, holding it up now. He's just holding it on all that thrust. He's got a power ratio of 1 to 1.1. So he's got excess power there. Letting it hover. Gyroscopic effects from the prop kicking in now. Still under control. Holding it gently and letting it now tumble over. Picking up the speed. As the airspeed picks up, you get more control back into the all the control surfaces on the airframe, and then quickly picking up speed as well. Quite nose heavy aircraft. Not only requiring a lot of expertise in your own body fitness, you have to be very fit to, of course, do this sort of work, but maintain a lot of agility at the same time, putting in multiple rolls on the way up there because you've got so much power to play with. You just keep on climbing and climbing and climbing. It's absolutely spectacular machine, this. So 2 sets of levers, 2 sets of fuel controls, an awful lot of activity going in the cockpit, as well as, of course, maneuvering the stick and the rudders to both initiate and then recover from those violent maneuvers. I hear the other aircraft chatting in the background. You may pick that up now and again. In the back of my headset. They're out to sea at the moment. I just was hoping for one more pass from Richard, but we're not going to get that today. As we, between each aircraft, we just have to reset the safety parameters, ensure that all is set and ready for the next act to come on, which is very unique, I can assure you. In this week leading up to the 80th anniversary of D-Day, many of us in this business, including the MOD and the government, putting a lot of effort into commemorating the veterans from all those years ago. And not least, here we have a 3 aircraft in formation all the way from Duxford, the home of so much historic aviation, coming in from the left-hand side. And as I say, this absolutely unique. Leading from the front, a Blenheim, and then flanked with the notable Spitfire and a P-51 Mustang, the D-Day Combine from Duxford. This is one of the most beautifully flown sequences of the day yesterday. Give you a moment to really take in what you're seeing here. It's an awful lot of history packed into just 3 aircraft. The Blenheim, of course, bore the brunt of the first couple of years of the Second World War. Very unique British aircraft. And then 2 of the most iconic and most successful fighters of the Second World War. They'll do just a couple of passes for you, then break into individual demonstrations from each one. All very relatively rare aircraft in their marks. A Mark 11 is a very unusual Spitfire to have displaying. A good few Spitfires, of course, still exist, and more being developed and reconditioned, refurbished and rebuilt for passenger flying around the country. And P-51 Mustang, eternally popular. Bristol Blenheim was designed and built by the Bristol Airplane Company, used extensively in the first 2 years of the Second World War. Examples being used as trainers right up until the end of the war. The development began as the Type 142. It was actually a civil airliner challenge from the newspaper proprietor Lord Rothermere to produce the fastest commercial aircraft in Europe at that time. The 142 first flew in April 1935, and it was the Air Ministry that ordered a modified design as the 142M as a bomber for the Royal Air Force. Blenheim picked up the nickname from Rothermere as the Spirit of Britain. After its modification as a bomber, became the first stress skin aircraft accepted by the Royal Air Force. The fastest light bomber of its day, faster at the time than the fighter aircraft then on order, became the backbone of the early light bomber force. So very shortly the formation will break apart. You'll get the opportunity to see excitement, elan, pure speed and design. Stand by. At the controls of the Blenheim, John Romain from the Aircraft Restoration Company.
Blenheim for the break. Break. Go.
And a very, very poignant moment, as well as a delightful piece of flying. Deliveries of the new Blenheim to the Royal Air Force Squadrons commenced back in March 1937 with the Mark 1, which would eventually be developed into a longer nose Type 149. Both versions were converted into heavy fighters by the addition of a gun pack with 4 Browning 303 machine guns mounted under the fuselage. The Mark 4 was used as a maritime patrol aircraft as well, with both aircraft equally being used for bombing and gunnery trainers once they had become obsolete as combat aircraft. Advances, of course, in the fighters left it vulnerable when it was flown in daylight, though it did continue to be successful as a night fighter. Many other modifications were made, turning it into an extended range reconnaissance aircraft during the course of the war. But it did continue to take an awful lot of hits, and surprisingly, eventually outmatched by the competition. Around 200 Blenheims were fitted with the gun pack under the fuselage for those 303 Brownings, and also the airborne intercept version was refitted for use in the night fighter role. Right at the start of the war, the Blenheims were spread across much of the world in Egypt, Aden, Iraq, India, and Singapore. Luckily, by the outbreak of the war, another 168 Mark IVs had been entered into Royal Air Force service. Very first day of the war, it was a Blenheim Mark IV which crossed the German coast to perform a high-altitude reconnaissance mission upon the German Navy, flown by Flying Officer Andrew McPherson at the time. Following day, 15 Blenheims from 3 squadrons set off on one of the very first bombing missions to attack the ship spotted on the previous day from the reconnaissance route. One more pass from John Romain here, who's done the most exceptional job, a hugely accomplished warbird pilot himself, spent many years developing the business at Duxford, and as a result participated his aircraft in many movies that you will have all seen. As a result, not only probably with the most hours on this particular aircraft, but one of the most experienced Spitfire pilots in the entire country as well. Having been pressed into roles it wasn't initially designed for, it became effectively the first multi-role aircraft of the Royal Air Force, and the crews were very much praised by Winston Churchill, who paid homage to their bravery, comparing them to the charge of the Light Brigade. John will now just clear the airspace momentarily to allow the fighters now their rightful part in demonstrating their own prowess. Boys and girls, mums and dads, on the last passes, we do try to give the pilots a bit of a wave. They'll be looking out for you, and they are doing their best, obviously, to perform as professionally and accurately and timely as possible. These guys, once they're here, going straight off now to Duxford in East Anglia to do it all over again. But heads up on the right-hand side now as the fighter pair. What an exciting picture this is, coming in to grace this seafront here. A couple of passes from these guys, and then a little more detail and performance from each individual aircraft. D-51 in the lead there. Absolutely outstanding, successful long-range fighter escort of World War II. And of course the indomitable Spitfire. Outrageous success from R.J. Mitchell and his team at Supermarine. First flying in the 30s, of course. developed to phenomenal success, over 20,000 Spitfires in 22 different variants produced. Very sad that he didn't see that success, having died before the outbreak of war. I have to say just how blessed we are. That's a very, very special sight indeed. The D-Day stripes there really showing up in the sunlight here. Very poignant and emotional moment. These guys will be very busy during the course of next week. These marks, of course, relatively late developers during the Second World War, hence their appearance magnificently protecting the troops on the beaches over D-Day. The early part of the war, of course, very much not necessarily dominated, but featuring the sturdy and reliable and very efficient Hurricane, which bore the majority of hits during the course of the Battle of Britain. This now, of course, representing 4 years development after that period. And there the sound of John Dodd flying the P-51 Mustang, just pulling the brake. So we get a few minutes of aerial display. Initially here in what we'd refer to as a tail chase. We'll reposition shortly, go through a series of pairs maneuvers. P-51D leading here. Not a great success at first. It was designed for the British in only 120 days to meet a requirement to purchase more fighters. Just hear a little whistle there from the gun ports. And the first Mustangs were built with Allison engines and didn't prove to be a great success. And in 1942, they were transformed by the fitting, of course, of the infamous Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which transformed his performance and was much loved from there on. Merging the engine with the development of the 51Bs and C models with the 1944 51D platform, its bubble canopy, 6 guns, turned into one of the most iconic and potent fighters of all time. Range was an incredible 2,000 miles, thanks to a huge fuel capacity of over 1,000 litres internally and 815 litres in drop tanks. Mustang had a maximum level speed of 437 miles an hour at 25,000 feet and a maximum diving speed of 500 miles an hour with a service ceiling just a touch under 42,000 feet. Braking once again for a brief period of solo activity, and I think this is just a magnificent part of this entire show. Quite unique. John Dodd in the Mustang clearing off to the right-hand side, pulling up into what I think will be half Cuban. Yes, there, just touches the stick forward, puts it through 180 degrees. Lovely way to reposition the aircraft. This very rare Mark 11 flown by Martin Overall, also from the Aircraft Restoration Company in Duxford. John Dodd repositioning the outstanding P-51 there, giving you a bit of a wing waggle wave down below. Fantastic flight. Just 2 Mark 11s remain in airworthy condition. This one designed to perform high altitude, long distance photographic operations. Encompassing all their previous developments, of course, they learned so much about the effectiveness, not just us, but the enemy as well, the effectiveness of the fantastic Spitfire. One of the most interesting exploits of this aircraft was taking the initial images following the Dambusters raid to prove the extent of damage that had been inflicted on the enemy positions. Armament was removed in place of extra fuel tanks to allow for a significantly increased range. The only defences the 11 had to hand were height and speed. And they're departing off to fight another day. The classic victory roll. I think you'll appreciate an absolutely outstanding display of airmanship and authentic, historic warbird experience. We salute those, as we will do more in detail next week, who took part in the D-Day operation. So if the Air Force had their moment there, it's pretty much time for the Royal Navy, because we have a maritime section coming up now, which is altogether rather different, because it comprises aircraft from Navy Wings, the Navy Historic Trust at Royal Naval Air Station Yeovilton, and that also will combine with it a modern, up-to-date serving operational helicopter from there as well, the Wildcat, and that will be alongside a Stinson Reliant and a Wasp helicopter. Give another unique 3-ship opportunity for you photo enthusiasts out there, and that sequence will finish up with a solo display from what is referred to as the Black Cats, and that will be, of course, in the Wildcat. So keep your eyes peeled now, boys and girls. I'm looking out for another little 3-ship formation. I'm expecting it in from the left-hand side. They'll be holding, I suspect, just around the headland or a little further out to sea. And of course, the Navy always talk a different language to the Air Force and the Army. It's, there's a lot of fantastic banter goes on between the three services still to this day. And of course, the way we operate things and call into operations and standby and things like that. One of the unique elements of the Navy is, of course, the use of flags and whistles, and occasionally, of course, bugles as well. So when we want to get the aircrew up to speed, some decades ago, you might have heard something like that is the call to flying stations. Of course, a completely different environment in which to operate. The heaving, rolling decks, the rough weather, the rain, and everything else that these guys put up with to land on the back of a deck. And of course, that's their airfield. And when they take off, the airfield moves because it keeps going on towards another mission. And of course, up to the aircrew and the staff on board the ship to ensure that the helicopter recovers safely back to them. A very special, very different, and a very demanding environment in which to operate. Certainly not for the faint-hearted. So it's a pleasure to involve the historic flight Navy Wings. A bit more about them in a moment. Just keep our eyes out for this unique three-ship form. Coming off, yes, out to the left-hand side, what we call our 10 o'clock from where you're sitting. The Navy Wings itself, you may not know, is a charity. It's for many years supported the Royal Navy's aviation heritage, and now alongside the newly formed Navy Wings Heritage Flight, which has taken on the role of preserving and flying the historic aircraft you will see either side of the Wildcat here today. Their aim being to inspire future generations to remember the service and sacrifice of those involved with Navy flying and promote a deeper understanding of the important part played by the Royal Naval Air Service and the Fleet Air Arm in the history of our country. They fly a little bit slower than the fighters, understandably. It's, the historic components here you see here today are funded entirely by public donations, and clearly anything you can do to support them would be much appreciated, I'm sure. Going to be flying, as I mentioned, in many arduous conditions, in many cases under fire from those ships at sea. Got an extraordinary stable of aircraft at Yeovilton. Got, of course, a couple of Fairey Swordfish. One operating, sadly, not with us here today. Would have been terrific, that one painting up. But also a Seafire, a Wasp, a North American Harvard Stinson Reliant, you see here, leading from the front, a Tiger Moth, a Seahawk, a Sea Fury, and Chipmunks as well. But ladies and gentlemen, time now to welcome a contribution from both Navy Wings and the Royal Navy. Well, it's not totally a D-do formation as we have seen. It's nonetheless good to note that 17 Naval Air Squadrons in total were awarded Normandy 1944 battle honours for their contribution during Operation Neptune. That was, of course, part of Operation Overlord 80 years ago that began the liberation of France and laid the foundations of the Allied victory on the Western Front. Largest seaborne invasion in history, and with the characteristic versatility the Fleet Air Arm was able to operate with embarked squadrons, a whole variety of aircraft in those days, Hellcats, Wildcats and Avengers from escort carriers at sea. Also flew the Swordfish, Seafires, Spitfires and Avengers from airfields along the south coast as well. So it was a major contribution. Quite an extraordinary flight of aircraft in so many different ways, this. The Stinson Reliant, of course, very much a communications aircraft, and many people don't appreciate just how busy and how useful it was to the Royal Navy, primarily in both training and communications role, a utility aircraft, bright yellow colours. Alongside that, you can hear the mighty roar of the Nimbus engine from the helicopter on the far side, Wasp. And just pulling up now in front of us, breaking the formation, the Black Cat's Wildcat. Wasp now breaking. Both these aircraft will be back with us very shortly. And just an opportunity now to see a little more closely the work and the style and finesse of each individual aircraft. Flying the Wasp today is Tim Delafosse, of the many volunteer pilots of the Navy Wings Heritage Flight, owned and operated by Navy Wings. Painted in the colours of HMS Aurora's Wasp flight, and Aurora was a Leander class frigate. Tim's past experience been predominantly on Sea Kings, but this famous aircraft did so much good work with the Royal Navy. Originally called the Sea Scout, as it was developed exactly the same time and alongside the Army Scout helicopter, and was one of the world's first frigate-based choppers to undertake operations. First flew in 1963 and retired from the Royal Navy in 1988, most of which had been replaced by the mid-80s by the Lynx, which was then followed, of course, by the Wildcat, which you will see flying shortly. Notable difference between the Army and the Royal Navy Scout is the fitting of wheels. That, of course, is to allow greater maneuverability on a ship's flight deck. Here roaring round, tipping slightly nose forward. That's how it's meant to fly at high speed. Power coming from that Rolls-Royce Nimbus, providing just over 700 horsepower. It was a combat aircraft, though. It was able to carry 2 torpedoes or 2 anti-ship missiles, plus a GPMG. That's the general purpose machine gun. Its very first missile being fired by the Royal Navy in anger was from Wasp in the, well, it was at the Argentinian submarine, the ARA Santa Fe, during the Falklands conflict. The missile hit the submarine, preventing it submerging, and thus the sub was captured. In the Army version was armed with the SS-11, a wire-guided missile for overland operations. Both similar fuselage. You'll see it's very large, very robust. We would refer to it as a soldier and sailor-proof helicopter, very strong. Tim now showing the dexterity and maneuverability with a flying pirouette down the fly line. Served with many other navies around the world: New Zealand, South Africa, Netherlands, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brazil. General crew, 1 pilot plus 1 air crewman, who doubled up as the missile operator. Could carry up to 4 passengers. The Navy would have had one with a hook for underslung loads alongside the Army, but also this one would have had a winch for search and rescue work as well. And the big cabin, you see, it stretches very, very widely towards the tail of the machine, and that was to enable a stretcher to be fully fitted across the back seats. Of course, all of these carried out a huge range of utility work as well, communications, loads, and was frequently referred to as the ship's Land Rover, given the variety of tasks it had to undertake. The Army versions equally busy during the course of the Argentinian conflict as well. did outstanding work as a casualty evacuation helicopter. After Tim retired from the Navy, went on to fly many types in a 32 career at British Airways, including most of the Boeings and the Airbuses, plus some of the British HS 748s and the AC-111s, for example. And thus has quite a catalogue of air experience to bring to displaying the Wasp here today. So Tim just positioning now towards the tail end of this display. You know what to do, boys and girls, don't you? Give him a big wave, he'll give you a little nod, and he'll be looking at you from the cockpit. Very comfortable, very competent display. And there he is, there's a nod. Come on, boys and girls, give him a wave. There's Tim there, and doing his very best to keep us engaged. Tim Delafosse and the Westland Scout. Great machine, and loved by many, many who flew that particular aircraft. So we're waiting now. We've got to see the Stinson Reliant next, and then holding out to sea, I think, is the Wildcat, who will be completing this, not just the first half of the show this afternoon, but this particular section of Royal Navy Maritime Aviation. So keep your eyes peeled now for the yellow aircraft. Looks a bit strange, doesn't it? But it's really, really robust, excellent utility aircraft once again, and very maneuverable as well. So here she comes, in the hands today of Mark Jameson. And putting through some relatively straightforward, simple maneuvers. Just coming in now, downwind at, well, sort of wind's on his right really, but around about 100 feet at 100 knots. Quite quiet, but when he puts the throttle on there, you'll certainly notice the change in tone. As mentioned before, it's very much a communications and navigational training aircraft, able to cruise at around about 120 miles an hour. And that engine on the front, a big Lycoming R680. Gives it a range of about 850 miles and able to fly up to about 21,000 feet. Lovely aircraft, isn't it? Built by the Stinson Aircraft Company of Detroit in 1943. This one is one of 573, would you believe, transferred to the Royal Navy under a lend-to-lease arrangement during the Second World War. And that was, of course, a major assistance program from the United States as part of the recovery phase after the Second World War. It's, as an American civil aircraft, it first appeared in 1933. Mark putting it through a few turn configurations here before then reversing his roll. Very gentle. Many pilots could of course, and they did, fly these more robustly during the course of their service. But nowadays, in order to preserve their well-being, to preserve the life of each of these aircraft, all these aircraft flown by hugely experienced pilots, maintained to keep them going for many generations to come. So just reversing his angle now, putting up, he'll return back to about 200 feet and 100 knots, to pass from the left across to our right-hand side. The aircraft itself was employed extensively by the Fleet Air Arm between 1943 and 1946 for navigational training and as a communications aircraft for many second-line units. Most of the aircraft, however, were retired to the USA after the war and eventually became civil registered. A neat little touring aircraft, in actual fact, so you can take 4 people in it. But I suspect with that engine, we're a little bit thirsty and not too cheap to operate. You can see it handles well. That high wing neatly configured for what we refer to as stall operations as well. Although not renowned for stall performance, it was extremely versatile and with good performance. Had a very solid feel, ideal for the communication and training roles. Slowing it way down now gives you a really good opportunity just to see how capable this aircraft is. Really useful for flying in bad weather, flying at low level, flying into confined airstrips around countryside, or indeed just in an extended search and reconnaissance roles if that was necessary, if you happened to be in that aircraft at the time when it was required to do additional search work. This particular aircraft is 81 years old in this month. It's the latest acquisition for Navy wings, and also ideal as a large tailwheel training aircraft for the pilots moving on from their initial chipmunk training. Also used today still as a communications aircraft, attending fly-ins, and occasionally, as you see today, let out to display. Well, coming towards the end of Mark's demonstration now, I think we might get one pass because he would almost certainly, I think, be planning to depart to the north and east of us. And what a graceful, beautiful sight that is against the blue sky. Yellow features hugely in aviation as being a very conspicuous color. Both to, of course, alert other pilots in the area to the fact that you're around as well. So to be seen and be seen. So, as I've guessed, this is now his last pass, and you know what to do, boys and girls, don't you? He'll be giving you a quick wink from the cockpit. So please give Mark Jacobson a good wave. Farewell from this English Riviera Airshow. Yeah, there's the wing waggle. Really nice job, and what a delightful aircraft to see here as well. Most unusual. Excellent. So now we're moving on to the modern day with some house, because waiting far out to sea, if you, with those with beady eyes, will see at relatively low level, about 1 finger, maybe 1.5 fingers above the horizon, way beyond all those boats you can see, a grey helicopter hovering out to sea. And that, of course, is the Wildcat that we are expecting, and now representing today's Royal Navy as well. So running in fast, keep your eyes peeled now. The Black Cats have been a popular feature on the airshow circuit since 2001. When they were known as the Lynx Pair, they went on and moved from there. They got support from the Royal Navy and Augusta Westland. Now, of course, that is Leonardo helicopters. You can hear the mighty engine throbbing as they come running in at about 120 knots at 100 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Royal Naval Air Station, Yeovilton, the Black Cats. So at the controls today, we've got the aircraft Course-Line Black 1, flown by Lieutenant Michael Vivian and Lieutenant Scotty Sunderland. And we'd like to give a huge welcome to Becca and little son Oscar, who are watching here today, the family of Scotty, and very much welcome you here. These boys, of course, giving up many weekends to go around and entertain the likes of us around the coastlines of Britain and over and above the call of duty. So thank you guys, and thank you Becca for making the effort to join us here today. Team adopted the Black Cats name some years ago, derived from the Lynx Wildcat of 702 Naval Air Squadron, the squadron badge, and also the naval slang of black catting, which is all about really not quite spoofing, but implying that you can do or have done something better than your chum. Black Cat's parent squadron is 825 Naval Air Squadron. It's part of the Wildcat Maritime Force based at Yeovilton. They're responsible for training all Wildcat pilots and observers and looking after all the flights on board the Royal Navy frigates and destroyers around the world. Of course, they vary different operations from much of the Army and the Royal Air Force by deploying individual flights to all these ships, and so they're dispersed all the time around the world. The aircraft itself is an Augusta Westland 159 Wildcat, a combat helicopter, relatively new generation, with cutting-edge sensors and mission equipment. The Army has a slightly different variant of this. So in addition to the sensors it has on board and the addition of what was rated as the future anti-surface guided weapon, it also carries the Bartlett laser-guided rocket system from Thales, which entered service in 2021, and the Sea Venom a guided anti-shipping missile produced by MBDA. So that aircraft capable of not only carefully seeking and searching out the enemy, but also packing quite a punch against them as well. So the two crew on board today, Viv and Scotty, both been on many deployments and tours from across the Middle East, supporting maritime security operations as well as force protection to the QE carrier, and was the first flight to deploy with the Martlet missile. Scott has been operating the aircraft since 2017, spending his deployed time doing very different work, mainly in the Gulf of Oman and counter-narcotics operations, and also training as part of the maritime counter-terrorism flight. Both now pilot instructors on the operational conversion units, training the latest generation of Wildcat aircrew in the art of maritime strike. There we go, in this rearwards transmission, you know what's coming up next. A little nod from the crew. You know what to do, boys and girls, don't you? Once they give you that little nod there, do give them a big wave. Great to see the Black Cats back in action again, and they're hoping very much to get that second aircraft back in later in the year as well. They've asked me to pass on their thanks to everyone that's helped support them through starting this season. It is their first weekend for many of us actually. And also huge thanks to their primary sponsors, Leonardo Helicopters and Breitling. There we go, a consummate display, very, very well delivered. And of course these guys back to their normal training tomorrow morning. They don't get much time off. Busy, 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 the British military forces these days in all respects. I suspect the likes of you will only know half of the things they're doing around the world at the moment, and you can guess at one or two of them. But nonetheless, so you take our hats off to these guys and wish them the very best of luck in both the training and, of course, the operational output that they're required to produce. That's blade slap there coming from the increased pressure and performance of making a tighter turn. And they're giving us a rotor waggle as opposed to a wing waggle, as they say a farewell. Tootling off back to Old Naval Air Station, Yeovilton, to continue the good work they're doing there. And we do hope Scotty's family have enjoyed their really good day out here at the English Riviera Airshow, as many of you. Well, we're going to take a shortish break, around about 45 minutes now, where you can top up in your teas and coffees, maybe go and have a swim. And if you haven't done so yet, pick up yourself a program as well, just to get some fantastic detail and events. Of course, there's music and activities right through until late this evening on the greens here in Paignton. Make the most of that, and of course all the vendors and exhibitors. But during this break, something special is also going to happen. And if you're near the pier, on the northern side of the pier, then you'll see a jet ski out there, and that is preparing for James Preswood to get airborne, would you believe? Yes, it is an aerial act on his flyboard. That is coming up in the next couple of minutes. Well, we see preparations still taking place. This will happen shortly. And it's definitely worth watching if you do get a moment just to amble on. Probably help if you moved perhaps a little closer. If you're on the beach, then you'll be able to see him anyway. Just opposite, there's a big rib, and between the rib and the beach is James's jet ski, which he launches from the back of that. Well, I think we'll dispense with the hornpipe. That's far too hot to jig around the beach, isn't it? And with the Royal Navy having departed. Although we will see another aircraft from Navy Wings a little later on this afternoon. So it looks like we're almost about to shoot. He's just propelling himself out using the jet harness that he has available. And we're expecting to see some red, white and blue smoke. And that's is key to the start. So keep your eyes posted. And I reckon he's been doing this a good while because it's a pretty impressive demonstration. So the jet ski's on his way out. There's a man floating in the water, and I think he's about to get airborne. So if you're not seeing what I'm chatting about or is about to be launched, the activity is just on the northern side of the pier. And it's about 8 or 9 minutes worth. I can assure you it's worth a look at. It's very aerobatic. So, something I've got to say, he must have been doing it a while because the manoeuvres are quite extraordinary. Of course, all the power coming from the water itself. So here comes the smoke. That means I think we're about to go. So I'm going to leave you in the hands with James's own soundtrack. Well, it's great effort there from James. Giving him a huge wave and a round of applause. Thanks very much indeed. That was pretty spectacular stuff, and love to know. I've never had a go at it myself, but it looks hugely great fun. So very well done indeed. And I'm not so sure whether, I'm guessing he must have a website somewhere, but James Preswood there anyway, doing extremely amazing things on a flyboard. And I'm sure we're going to see lots more of him around. Great form of entertainment to put into the mix of any show. And let's hope we see a bit more of that. Okay, well, we've got about half an hour to go before we resume flying again. So, again, a good chance to get up to speed with all the other things you might want to do. Take the kiddies around to the military village, for example. That's a good possibility. Or indeed just going to top up with your teas and coffees and ice creams and all that sort of mix. But very kindly, amongst our many supporters this year, we've also got BBC Radio Devon. And they've been helping out with providing us some lovely music links and messaging services as well, alongside all the other sponsors that have done so well. Big team have gone into a lot of efforts, and we're joined this year by loads of extra volunteers, which has been quite superb. If you've got any concerns, make your way along to the information point, which is right in the centre of the Greens area on the Patent seafront. And of course, that also doubles up as the Lost Children. But right now, until we start flying again, I'll leave you with the sounds from BBC Radio Devon. Well, we've just got about 5 minutes or so now till we restart the flying. So those of you might want to start making your way back to the beach, especially if you're paddling out towards the sea there. I can see one or two people just to keep the safety zone for flying completely clear. That would be great. And those who are getting your teas and coffees and ice creams get settled back in for another good hour and a bit's worth of some really terrific flying. Again, a complete cross-section. A bit more maritime. We've got a Catalina and a Sea King, and then essentially some frontline warbird work again. Of course, the Bronco and the Fury, finishing off with the Typhoon this afternoon. But also dipping back in briefly to Navy Wings with the use of their harbour as well. But we're getting prepared now to see the wonderful consolidated PBY Catalina, which will be gracing the shores once again. It was the most beautiful sight yesterday. So get yourselves ready for the start of the second part of day 2 of this wonderful Riviera Airshow. And our grateful thanks to BBC Radio Devon for supplying us with musical interludes and information and messaging throughout the course of the past 2 days as well, alongside the many, many other volunteers and sponsors. More on that later on. But I hear the radio waves crackling into life behind me, which is always a wonderful sound because it means we're about to start flying again. And as I say, we're kicking off in about 2 to 3 minutes' time with the beautiful, beautiful aircraft. If you look out to sea up on the left-hand side, around about 11 o'clock, if you're looking out to sea above the big yellow buoy there, you'll see a lumbering great white aircraft, and it's absolutely glorious. So we'll be calling her in very, very shortly indeed. And I've just heard the wonderful words that should be given cleared to come in and display. So coming in from the wild blue yonder out there where the sky meets the sea, in its absolute element, one of the most graceful and historic maritime aircraft of all time. PBY 5A Catalina flying boat, christened as Miss Pickup. Little design on the leading edge of the fuselage, just ahead of the landing undercarriage. Be able to pick that out with your binos or cameras, and more stories to come, I can assure you. But wonderful. The operators of this particular Catalina, plain sailing, based across at Duxford, been operating this aircraft for many, many years, and have a huge amount of experience in the airshow business. Aircraft is owned by a syndicate of shareholders. It's something you can actually buy into yourself if that's what you may be interested in. Got it. And here gracefully joining us, guys, as if a wonderful great albatross of the sea. A delightful approach and arrival, the PBY Catalina flying boat. An absolute pleasure. Consolidated Catalina, arguably the most famous and successful flying boat ever built. Full of heritage, land, passion, and just sheer pleasure. Looking so comfortable in this maritime environment. There were more built of this than any other flying boat type, well over 3,200 in North America. and a couple of dozen in Russia, and produced in both the flying boat and amphibious versions. Of course, the amphibious version, and not just having a float capability, but a hard runway landing facility with wheels built into the side of the fuselage as well. They were used in virtually all the theatres of operation in World War II and by the Allied Air Forces and the US Navy, used for anti-submarine warfare, coastal patrol, convoy escort and air-sea rescue. Catalina, or PBY as it was known to the US Navy, was very closely involved in the attack on Pearl Harbor, the interception of the Japanese invasion force on its way to Ceylon, the discovery and shadowing of the Bismarck prior to its destruction, and the sinking of several dozen U-boats. In the hands today as captain is John Harmsworth. He's assisted up front by Jeff Boyling, the co-pilot. And the all-important crew chief today is Roger Jackson. Your readers of Fly Past magazine, there's an interesting feature on the Catalina in the latest article about John Cruikshank, Victoria Cross. One of two Coastal Command Catalina pilots awarded that decoration. He's still alive at the age of 104. He's the last surviving World War II VC holder. Absolutely extraordinary. But in a moment, I'm going to be referring to another well-known local who flew Catalinas, and that was Leslie Roy Cole, a DFC and bar. So that's a pretty significant award as well. And I've been chatting to his son, Tom Cole, who's with us here today. Flying here today, the last one still flying outside of the Americas. Now here, showing it in the configuration to land at sea, you see the little pontoon floats on either wing deployed for preparation for landing. If you look up closely, you may just see that artwork between the wheel and the cockpit, just below on the fuselage there as well. Design noted, nicknamed as Miss Pickup, based on a character, Miss Lace, created by legendary wartime cartoonist Milton Caniff. And this comes from the photographic evidence enabling the recreation of 915's original artwork. It's painted onto the airframe at Keesler Field Air Sea Rescue School in Mississippi, just before her young crew made the long ferry flight to their new base at Halesworth in Suffolk, assigned to the 5th Emergency Rescue Squadron, going to the war effort, rescuing many downed airmen from the perilous North Sea. This aircraft was built by Canadian Vickers at Cartierville in Quebec for the Royal Canadian Air Force in the autumn of 1943. Designated at that stage a Canso A, as the Canadians called it. Here you now see it with the undercarriage deployed for an amphibious configuration landing. Very, very versatile, of course. During the war, the aircraft hunted enemy submarines patrolling day and night along the coast of Western Canada. Post-war, it was used briefly as a freighter before joining a search and rescue flight, where it served until finally being sold in 1961. Going back to our own local, Leslie Roy Cole, DFC and bar, was born here in Torquay, very close to us, of course, in Paignton. in 1919, joined the RAF at the age of 18, went on to stay in the Air Force, had an amazing flying career right through until 1961, and was the flight engineer on Catalinas with Coastal Command. And then returned here after retirement to Torbay. Looking at his logbook here from October 1941, he was based out of Lochern in those days up in Northern Ireland, but there are several mentions of being on convoy duties where he attacked the Condor. Straight after that, the next day was out on a search for a disabled aircraft, Whitley, down in the sea. They managed to rescue the crew from that. The next day on convoy duties, protection duties, and then on an anti-submarine patrol. They were very, very busy people indeed. Just about a week later of that, in November, the crew were tasked to search for a German pocket battleship, the Admiral von Scheer, off the coast of Iceland. So it went on day in, day out, through whatever weathers. Quite a remarkable combination of effort. Of course, it could stay up for a good few hours, this aircraft. Had a service ceiling of around 15,000 feet. It could patrol 2,500 miles, using those two 1,200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney twin Wasp radials. Amazingly reliable engines they were as well. Maximum speed of around 180 miles an hour with a normal crew of 8. It was a fighting machine as well, and even in Leslie Cole's logbook, there's evidence of his experience with gunnery training using machine guns and also depth charges and torpedoes. So, Tom, you must be very proud of your father, and I gather you managed to experience a very poignant moment in Westminster Abbey some years ago.
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was very moving. Didn't know what to expect, really, but I was actually sat about 3 seats from the Queen. Why me and my sister were put there, I don't really know, but it was just an amazing experience the whole day.
Well, well done, and we'll keep his memory alive. And I'm sure the whole family very proud of being related to a man that served on these extraordinary aircraft during the course of the Second World War. Flies off again into the wild blue yonder, going out to sea where, of course, he's most at comfort. Exactly the environment, but of course a reminiscent of all the remarkable missions and the rescues that they encountered, themselves often being exposed to enemy fire, particularly when floating about on the ocean, picking up downed fighter air crewmen. As I mentioned earlier on, there is an opportunity for you to become a shareholder as well and have a significant part in the ownership and operation of this particular aircraft. Have a look at the article in Flypast magazine and then maybe hit their website and get to know the operation a little bit more. Just go to www.catalina.org.uk. So now moving on to a rather more modern maritime helicopter in this instance, coming from historic helicopters, the stable of Andrew Whitehead down at Chard, and he has very kindly provided this aircraft for us here today. Something that was very, very familiar indeed around the shores of Great Britain several decades ago. Certainly I remember as a kid sitting on the beach playing with my parents and waving to the search and rescue helicopters that often used to just come and provide an extra bit of fun to the afternoon. So Andrew Whitehouse has done the most fantastic job at Chard, collecting an extraordinary number of historic heritage aircraft, supporting frequently the Navy Wings operation at the same time. He's got 6 airworthy Sea Kings, 2 Royal Air Force yellow search and rescue ones, as you can see here, a R3, and 2 ex-Belgian Air Force search and rescue ones, and also 2 Mark IV, what we call jungly commander ones. Also along in his stable is a Wessex, a Lynx, and a Whirlwind as well. British license-built version of the American Sikorsky S-61 helicopter of the same name, built by Westland Helicopters. The aircraft differs considerably from the American version with the Rolls-Royce Gnome engines. They were derived from a General Electric version. And of course equipped with British-made anti-submarine warfare systems and a fully computerized flight control system. Primarily designed for performing anti-submarine warfare missions, the Sea King variant was adopted by Westland as a troop transport known as the Commando, which of course we refer to as the Junglies. Going to put it through a variety of roll demonstrations, as would normally have been conducted by the Royal Air Force or the Royal Navy, depending which configuration you happen to have seen in the day. They led the way, this particular variation, the R3 and 3As, with the addition of a Fleur turret in the very early 2000s, which was a real game changer in search and rescue, giving the capability to see ahead in the water and in the dark of up to about 200 meters away. Many rescues featured and recorded. The aircraft in the hands today of Michael Malrick Smith, himself a hugely well-known, experienced and expert helicopter pilot. Spent many years in the Royal Navy himself before getting involved with Castle Air, and that led him into an extraordinary amount of film and television production work, which he's still very much immersed. Colourful character, and has made a major contribution to aviation in so many different ways. In addition to the search and rescue fit, the fuselage could always take 17 seated casualties and 2 stretchers as well. Some of you will be familiar with the Royal Air Force search and rescue flight at Chivenna, which covered this area, Paynton and Torbay, as part of their patch, and have completed rescues on the cliffs at the north of the bay by the co-pilot who's flying here today, and that, of course, is Jonathan Evans. So thank you so much for that. However, you can't operate this on your own without the assistance of very, very competent and professional rear crew as well. And the commitment and dedication that goes into keeping these aircraft airborne, although in the hands and generosity of Andrew Whitehouse himself, the owner of historic helicopters, the addition of supporters and volunteers, but particularly those perhaps more unsung, in today's case being Chris Page and Paul Middlehurst, who you will see some action provided by them when they start doing some winching drills and also dropping a flag as well. Chris is a serving engineer who was pivotal to the transfer of ownership and continuing airworthiness from the MOD to historic helicopters. And Paul himself is also an ex-Royal Navy air crewman and experienced Sea King operator. John is in the left-hand seat today, as I mentioned, well over 10,000 hours as an RAF helicopter pilot and instructor. First flew the Sea King back in 2001 and then spent 13 years as a search and rescue pilot as well, and was part of the crews based out at Chivenor, conducting many rescues in and around the Torbay area. So they now see the crew coming into action, hanging from the strop, doing a few aerobatics himself on the end of there. And I'm not sure whether this one has it fitted, but many of the Sea Kings had a little, just a tiny little control in the back, so the rear crew operators were able to just get about 10% worth of the maneuverability of the aircraft in their own hands, just to do those final adjustments. You can imagine what it must be like. It's a beautiful day here today, flat, calm sea. But of course, most incidents happen in the worst of weathers, and the courage, skill and bravery of these guys must be recognized in terms of the environments they went into. Heaving seas, dark, cold, gale force winds, not just at sea, but of course in the mountains as well, where they did equally remarkable work. Search roles, the Sea Kings were able to operate to precise navigational standards, fitted with a multi-band homing system, satellite nav systems, a search radar and a comprehensive avionics suite, and a large section of radios as well. Equipped with a hydraulically operated main rescue hoist, an electrically operated emergency rescue hoist, and electrical connections as well for all the medical equipment that was required to be carried on board. I mentioned the video and infrared detection pod, which was a real game changer to the capability of this aircraft, and very similar to that used by police helicopters subsequently. All SAR crews were also trained to operate using night vision goggles over unfamiliar terrain. And the rear crew were also doubling up, being trained as paramedics to supply immediate first aid and recovery services immediately at the rescue site before handing over to other supporting forces. Rolls-Royce gnome turboshafts providing around 1,300 horsepower each. Maximum speed is a bit chunky aircraft, this quite heavy. Giving a maximum speed of about 125 knots and able to fly up to 10,000 feet. Following this maneuver, repositioning maneuver by Michael, who's captain of the aircraft today. We'll see a couple of little S-turns down the fly line before their final farewell, which I know will be very pleasing to the eye. I mentioned yellow already today. We've seen one aircraft. We're going to see another yellow aircraft later on as well. A very high conspicuity colour. Unlike its other version in the Commando, obviously being more camouflaged, the grey. One aircraft very tricky to see against both the sea and the sky. Repositioning now, coming into a steadier speed. Keep your eyes peeled. And you see now, just being deployed on its farewell towards the end of its display here now, the Royal Air Force ensign being deployed from the venerable R3 Sea King. Sea Kings were involved in a range of services across both the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, as well as wartime roles in the Falklands War, the Gulf War, the Falklands conflict, the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War. The Sea King, perhaps the most well known in its capacity in the search and rescue role. Red and grey with the Navy, and as you see today, yellow livery with the Royal Air Force. Of course, also adopted in the more strategic role of being an airborne early warning platform. This particular aircraft, 597, was one of a small number of Sea Kings to be painted also temporarily dark sea grey for their duty in post-war Falkland Islands activities. Joined historic helicopters and Andrew Whitehouse's team there, as another iconic aircraft for the flight, being re-registered with the CAA as GSKNG for Sea King. Featured notably in the Sunday evening drama on BBC One, Vigil, and her partnership also featured in the Apple TV film. So here on his farewell tour, you know what to do, boys and girls, mums and dads. Give the crew a massive, great wave, all working very hard to entertain us here during the course of the afternoon. Our grateful thanks to Michael Malik Smith at the controls, Jonathan Evans alongside him, and in the back providing us with additional entertainment with the winching and the flag now going back in the cockpit, aided by Chris Page and Paul Middlehurst. And our grateful thanks to Andrew Whitehouse and Historic Helicopters across in Somerset. And there, another farewell nod from Michael and Jonathan up front. Concluding a really excellent demonstration, and so good to see that back after many, many decades absence from the shorelines of UK. Well, it's all rushing away far too quickly, isn't it? But we've still got a good 45 minutes or so of aircraft, and 4 more to come your way. Very shortly, we'll see the OV-10 Bronco, and a great combat zone aircraft for supporting a lot of ground activity. The Navy Wings contribution, as I mentioned, 1 more yellow aircraft to go. That's the Harvard. Extremely popular and well-known aircraft, particularly in the training world. Literally thousands and thousands of pilots were trained on Harvards. Then we have the Fury, a rare example actually of a Fury. The majority, of course, coming out of the Hawker factory were built as Sea Furies. You'll be familiar with that. And then finishing off this afternoon with the mighty Turbo and the Typhoon. So we're keeping our eyes peeled now for the OV-10 Bronco, a neat little aircraft. You may not have seen this before, unless you were here yesterday, of course. Really excellent. A light turboprop attack and observation aircraft developed in the 1960s for counterinsurgency combat. One of its primary missions was as a forward air control aircraft in the Vietnam War. Well, if you're wondering where this attack is coming from, just look out to your right-hand side, just above the trees, towards the southern end of the bay. Low and slow, looking for targets on the ground. They're used for observation, forward air control, helicopter escort, armed reconnaissance, utility light air transport, and limited ground attack. Please welcome Tony De Bruyne and the OV-10 Bronco. The Bronco also performed aerial radiological reconnaissance, tactical air observation, artillery and naval gunfire spotting, airborne control of tactical air support operations, and frontline low-level aerial photography. Prototype in Vietnam, designed to lay smoke, was extremely successful, kept in service by evaluators for several months and only reluctantly released. That particular capability was not purchased due to a perceived lack of mission. Very good performing short takeoffs and landings, including on aircraft carriers and large deck amphibious assault ships without using catapults or arresting wires. Also designed to take off and land on unimproved sites. Simple repairs can easily be made on this aircraft with ordinary tools, and no ground equipment is required to start the engines. It was a really robust, responsive, tactically useful aircraft. Great handling, as you'll see throughout the course of the display. Able to fly for over 5 hours with external fuel tanks. Great visibility, tandem seat configuration in the cockpit with a lovely big wraparound visibility as well. You remove the second seat, you can carry up to, in fact, over 3,000 pounds of cargo, 5 paratroopers or 2 patients on stretchers with an attendant. The engines you're listening to there are 2 Garrett T76s, producing just over 700 horsepower. And you can just see the way Tony brings it in around the pier head there at low level, just what a surprise this would bring to troops on the ground. Able to fly up to 30,000 feet and then, of course, descend upon an unwitting enemy position. At a great range of over 1,300 miles if needed. And could maintain a max speed of just over 280 miles an hour. And they're giving a demonstration of a typical strafing performance. Aircraft was actually introduced back in the mid-60s, and its first flight taking place in July 1965. It served in all 3 US branches of aviation, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines. Here, another strafing attack from the left. Look at the sharp pull-up, pulling a couple of G there just to get out of range of the small arms fire to minimize your exposure to enemy positions. The Bronco, however, did have armor protection, bullet-resistant windshields, and a self-sealing fuel cell for operating in such hostile environments. Other countries also invested in this aircraft, to Germany, Thailand, Venezuela, and Indonesia. This one an example of an ex-German Bronco. Other supplies went to Morocco, the Philippines, and Colombia. And also used by the Special Forces against ISIS as well in the Mark 10 G. Tony, a bit of an expert at flying twin Garrett powered turboprop aircraft because he also flew a Shorts SC7 Skyvan for many, many years, and very comfortable with the maneuverability of this aircraft as well. An avid enthusiast, a lot of background in aviation photography, and able to use this aircraft as well as its configuration allows good visibility all round and from the rear as well. So this 10B variant produced for Germany in the Target tug role, 18 aircraft of those were delivered to them in the 70s. equipped with such equipment. A clear dome replaced the rear cargo door. Here now with his massive big wing waggle, literally going the full spec, 90 left and 90 right. So to enhance the aviation photography capability, he also put in behind the dome a rearwards facing seat for not just for the winch operator, which would have operated in Germany, but also now for photography as well. This one was restored by Tony to flying condition back in 2012. A real driving force behind the project, and as I say, a very passionate performer and hugely experienced on this aircraft. Now configuring for what we call the Khe-Sanh approach. This was a Vietnam-derived approach to minimize your exposure to ground fire by coming in very, very steeply. And if we had a runway there, or a ship indeed, an amphibious deck, he'd be able to land this in literally just a couple of 100 yards. And that is how you do it. Very capable short takeoff and landing aircraft. And I think that's it from Tony there. It's come all the way from Belgium, and he's a great supporter of the British air display circuit. Our grateful thanks to him. And I think you'll agree, really impressive display. And it's just such a neatly unusual aircraft. Not many of them around this area at all. Coming up very shortly, we got another expert pilot and a lovely aircraft from Navy Wings in the hands of Bill Dean. That'll be followed by the Fury and then the Typhoon. So just remember, if you are thinking of moving off afterwards, don't rush too much. Of course, there will be congestion on the pavements and the roads at the end of the show. Make the most of what is available in the showground. There's music and entertainment later during the course of the afternoon and evening. That's provided by a whole number of different ages. Roundabout, we'll be finishing shortly before 5 o'clock. We've got Emma Pick. After her, with the Vinyl Avengers DJ, AJ and Elliot. And running into the evening, Harbour Band. The show closing at around 9 o'clock this evening. Please remember to keep a hold of all your belongings, children, everything else. Do remind the children, keep a hat on, put plenty of sunscreen on them as well. The sun's still very, very hot and high. At this, the UV index extremely high this time of year. Well, we're just waiting for Bill to clock in. I haven't heard him on the airwaves yet, but I'm sure and we've just had the signal that he is inbound, got his clearance to display, and should be with us very, very shortly. And there he is, over on the right-hand side. I promise you another yellow aircraft, and here it is. This one, a meaty, chunky training aircraft. I mentioned earlier, wonderful, familiar roar from that engine, and used to train thousands and thousands of pilots. This aircraft, a T6, otherwise known as a Texan in America. The sound you're hearing there from a Wasp radial engine producing 600 horsepower, an absolutely marvellous machine, and very, very reliable indeed. Could be equipped with up to 3 7.62 machine guns. This aircraft could cruise around 170 miles an hour, giving you about 700 miles range. So a pretty practical aircraft as well. But it really was used to train pilots, and it still is today by Navy wings. This particular aircraft, the US version of the very successful Harvard family, dating right back until the late 1930s. Over 17,000 of these aircraft were built, either as Harvards for the British and Commonwealth Air Forces, or for the US Navy with a deck hook, or the T6 Texans for the US Army. Bill, a hugely well-known and extremely experienced professional pilot and test pilot, able to put this easily through its paces for us here today. Firm favourite with many pilots actually, and a considerable number of aircraft still flying, particularly in races or displaying solo and with formation teams right across the world. Recognised very much as the standard stepping stone trainer for all larger engine warbirds, and in other words, if you're going on to fly bigger, heavier, greater energy warbirds, some things like the Mustang, the Hellcats, so on and so forth. This is what you would fly after your initial training. And of course, back in the day, that could very much have been perhaps a Tiger Moth, or in the modern training world, many organizations such as Navy Wings keep a couple of chipmunks for initial training to get your tail wheel brain back in action again before then going on to the heavier weight and power of the Harvard. Not much modern aviation actually gives you. Well, good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. Our apologies for going into silent mode there. We had a power failure across the main PA system. That is now rectified, as I wouldn't be talking to you otherwise. So thank you for your patience there. And congratulations to Bill Dean there, operating in a bit of a void, but consummately well performed, as of course you would expect from him. So we have the Fury in the hold, and we'll be calling him in very, very shortly to continue the flying display. And we also have we're talking to the Typhoon pilot on the ground as well, also ready to go. So just stand by, and we will hopefully get everything restarted. Of course, it kicks out all the systems that we use in the commentary box as well, and across our local area here, actually. So we just need to restart all the various computing equipment, as you would imagine, for safety reasons, of course. But nonetheless, we will be able to continue very shortly. Okay, well, the good news is we've just got 2 minutes now. We have reconnected ourselves to the outside world, which is good news. The main important thing, of course, is all our communications equipment went down at the same stage, and we cannot continue the air show without having all the necessary safety things in place. And that's all now been restored. And very shortly, we'll be seeing a Hawker Fury. Monoplane designed, not to be confused by, there was an older biplane Fury before this one. Of course, the Royal Air Force has a habit of renaming aircraft. But this one, built by Hawker Aircraft, they were developed in the 1940s and came out of the same stable as the well-known legendary Hawker chief designer Sidney Cam, who was proposing a lighter version of the Tempest fighter, for which specification was issued in May 1943. Sidney Cam, of course, was the brainchild behind the Hurricane as well in the 30s, and went right through in his career, remarkable career, right through to the early development of the Harrier. This the penultimate aircraft of what's been a glorious, glorious weekend here at the English Riviera Airshow. Finishing off in great style in around 10 minutes time with the frontline force and dynamism of the Royal Air Force Typhoon. At the same time that the Air Force were looking at something to compete with the Tempest, and here we have now arriving right in front of us Mark Levy in the Fury. Fantastic news to get him in on time. 5 prototypes were eventually developed with various variants of the Rolls-Royce Griffon and the Bristol Centaurus aircraft. This one, however, rather different from many others. Fast propeller-driven fighter in its maritime guise to serve with the Royal Navy, and one of the fastest production single-piston engine aircraft ever built. Didn't really make its presence felt, however, until the end of the Second World War, entering service just a couple of years after that. It became the Royal Navy's leading single-seat fighter, but became a very popular aircraft with many overseas militaries as well, using during the Korean War in the 1950s, and also in the invasion of Cuba, the famous Bay of Pigs. I mean, initially known as the RAF version as the Hawker Fury 1, and the Navy version as the Hawker Sea Fury F.X, but developed beyond that. Fitted with the Bristol Centaurus and also Napier Sabre engines. The entire RAF Fury order was, however, then cancelled as the RAF wished to focus effectively on the newly emerging jet-powered age. That took them, of course, in a whole different direction. This particular aircraft is quite unique in many cases, however. Goes back, the legacy to that goes back to development in 1946 as part of a deal with the Iraqi government for the supply of 13 non-navalized Baghdad Furies. They were referred to initially a two-seat trainer version that had been conceived, but the prototype, known as the Iraq dual trainer, were incorporated separate windscreens and canopies over tandem cockpits. The lateral arrangement found prone to collapse at high speeds.
I think he's obviously got some problem with the plane when he's stopped. Yeah.
And you noted that Mark pushed away from the display area there a moment ago, and we understand that he has recognised a couple of issues on board the aircraft, so he's elected to return directly to Exeter Airport. So our apologies for that, but of course safety absolutely paramount, and also an extremely valuable aircraft in its own right as well. About to mention, I may as well now, what you were about to see more of, which was produced by Hawkers as an Iraqi single-seat aircraft for the Iraqi Air Force, one of a contract for 60 aircraft. It eventually was brought to Orlando in Florida, went through a couple of hands, as many of these historic aircraft do, before flying again in April 1991 and being shipped across to UK. You won't see that, nor an indication of what it perhaps was capable of doing those days. But it's much better that we get it on the ground, get whatever issue Mark has discovered on it and get it sorted so that we will see that flying through the rest of this summer, hopefully. So that means we're rapidly moving now to the conclusion of a couple of days, but I hope you've certainly had a great day, and I don't know about you, but I think it's worth sticking around, going for another swim, listening to some entertainment on the green before considering hitting the car park on the motorways, which no doubt will beef up once the air show is finished. So do enjoy the rest of the evening. Great to see so many boats out here today as well. No surprise really, it's just a beautiful day to be on the ocean, and terrific. And you notice I didn't really explain earlier on, they're out there because of course we also sanitize the space over the sea, and the little yellow boys there, the limit of the area allowed for any swimming or activities on the ocean. So a bit of a dynamic situation going on behind me, as you can imagine, but we're now talking to the Typhoon pilot. He's up and ready to go, and we'll be calling him in the next minute or so. Well, this has been absolutely spectacular, and what it's been a fantastic weekend here. In hands today of David Turbo Turnbull. He is right at the sharp end of today's modern Royal Air Force. Joined the Air Force as direct entrant back in 2010 after completed his A-levels. Just absolutely dreaming to become a pilot for many, many years. Flying what is the most phenomenal combat aircraft, multi-swing roll capabilities. He was stream fast jet after elementary flying training, and got his hands very quickly after soloing on the Typhoon in 2018. Now posted, well, he was posted initially to the Mighty 2 Cooperation Squadron at Royal Air Force Lossiemouth, having deployed on Operation Shader over Iraq and Syria. Here he is now, welcome at 600 miles an hour. Absolutely fantastic arrival there, catching us all out, burning in there. And the only reason he was at 600 knots was because, of course, we have a speed limit here, and that's what it is. And if he goes any faster, I don't think we would have had many windows or ears left in the place. Absolutely perfect weather now for deploying this. Following that impressive arrival and a huge 9G turn there into his maneuver area. What is phenomenal about this aircraft at the same time, of course, is just the sheer minute space that such a big aircraft is able to maneuver in. Phenomenal performance, as you know. Breaks off to lift off in just 8 seconds. Breaks off to 35,000 feet and a speed of Mach 1.5 in just 2.5 minutes. Pulling here another 9G, and you'll see right up the tailpipe of those incredible. Yes, and you're hearing it as well. The EJ200 reheated turbofans giving us 20,000 pounds thrust per engine. As well as pulling 9G, can withstand a negative G of up to -3, which you'll see in the maneuvers coming up very shortly. And then take a look at the hard points underneath the jet now as she passes in front of you. Those hard points able to carry a phenomenal cross-section of weaponry and capability. Enhanced 1,000-pound freefall bombs, ASRAAM and AMRAAM missiles, the Mauser 27mm cannon, of course, also fitted with assistance inside digitally, a laser designating pod as well, and in the hands of very, very capable guy. Coming over the top there, checking over his shoulders, making sure the aircraft's level, spinning out and keeping those turns going in the descent. Got all sorts of help on board, and people often refer to Barking Betty, the little electronic digital voice in there, just keeping him under control as well, making sure that he retains safe flying. And here another shot of the underbelly. Lovely slow roll. Can be very difficult in some aircraft, of course, to keep that dead straight down the fly line. The aircraft, as you put one control in, wants to, there are always secondary effects of a control input. Up now into a barrel roll where you're carving the turn around a classic British barrel of beer. Slowing the jet down, pulling the stick back to around about 110 knots now, transitioning from high energy and high performance to now appear to be hardly moving in the sky. Be giving a little wave at the crowd as he comes by before then heading up into a slow speed loop. You can see there the canards twitching away, they're helping to control the aircraft. Here we go now, pulling up, still at relatively low speed into the next loop. A lot of help as well on board. He's got all sorts of things to give him full situational awareness of the battle area and the airspace. 3 multifunction head-down displays, a head-up display and a helmet-mounted display as well. He's looking down here, but pushing outwards now, and this is where we get the negative G coming in, all the blood pressing to his head. Nothing you can do about that, actually. And now pushing it to the skies. It's a brutal experience, negative G. But at the end of that, pushing out of the roll, turning back into more positive and more comfortable. The cockpit itself, a very comfortable little office up front there. And of course he's assisted by also a lot of G suppression kits from his chest right down to his socks as well, being able to give him assistance, this time with a lot of positive G on, rolling the jet again. And Turbo's asked me to dedicate this to the memory of Mark Schlongy Long. Of course, very sad news last weekend. They're all very great mates, and the Coningsby family up there And we thank you for your patience this morning as we at the Riviera Airshow also offered our commemorative thoughts earlier today. Heading straight towards us now, prepared for your farewell departure. There's only one way to leave an air show in a jet like this, and that's to go full throttle for the sky. Here he comes in now, one last 9G pull coming your way. Ball back stick, reheat on, and rocketing skywards and climbing thousands of feet in just a few seconds to exit the display area. David Turnbull, turbo to his chums, giving us your 2024 Royal Air Force Typhoon display, and he's asked me to pass on his thanks for all your support here. Do make sure, if you're interested in this, or you're even interested in joining the Air Force or any of the military, go down to the military village towards the end of the, it's the southern end of the Paynton Greens. And wow, how sad it is to call this just about an end of the show, but that is the way it is, and that fitting style and fitting finale to the day, absolutely magnificent. And our grateful thanks to all the crews who've helped us here today, to the phenomenal sponsors as well. And we must, of course, remember, coming into this D-Day week as well, all the activities which will be happening next week. Coming out next week, a number of tributes, nods towards D-Day. The embarkation service will take place on Beacon Quay, Torquay at 11 o'clock on the 6th of June. Beacon lighting will also take place at Corbin Head, Daddy Hole Plain and Shalston Pool on the 6th of June at 9:15 as part of the National D-Day campaign. In Brixham, the 80th anniversary of D-Day is being celebrated from the 4th to the 9th of June with events including a D-Day exhibition, an open event at Brixham Battery, quayside activities and a Shalston Pool sing-along as well, with evening social events on the 6th of June featuring a commemoration parade led by the Scottish Pipers and Drums. That'll start at 10:30 in the morning. Throughout the weekend there will be sea shanty performances, brass bands, a 1940s music concert with Sandy Sparkle and free film screenings as well. Just visit the English Riviera What's On page to find out more. But the British Legion have also asked me to mention another special day for them as well. On Thursday at 10:45, the parade at Beacon Quay in Torquay, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings. That'll be led by Robin Barlow, the Deputy Lieutenant of Devon, and featuring the High Sheriff as well, Commodore Jake Moores, and many, many other dignitaries. But along them will be reenactors, members of the Brixham Battery Heritage Group, from the Utah 237 Reenactment Group. In the meantime, it's just for me now to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening as well. And absolutely terrific couple of days. And we've enjoyed your company. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please make sure you've got all your belongings with you. And that includes the all-important children as well, and the granddads and grandmas. And do please make your way safely and slowly, please, across the Greens area. Stay if you can. Please don't rush to the cars. We know there will be congestion on the road. So take it easy. Have a swim. Go and have a cup of tea and a beer and a sandwich and enjoy the music on the stages as well. But finally, our grateful thanks to the masses of volunteers that have helped the council put on this event this year, and notably the English Riviera Bid Company and the top sponsors in the guise of Big Wave, who've supported with IT and design, and the hotels Mercure and Ibis Styles hotels, who've put in significant assistance. They've been supported by Kent's Tavern, GWR Railway, Torbay Pharmaceuticals, Barnes Aerospace, Swissco, Persimmon, Cavanna, Lanscove, and way too many. But assisting me help entertain you upstairs has been TSA Consulting, the Flying Display Directors team, who've managed yet again to put on a wonderfully entertaining and safe display for us all here. Just left for me to say thank you, good night, and very much look forward to joining you again next year. Go safely.